So if you don't have any self-belief, you can cultivate it. That was huge for me.
But as veterinary professionals, if you want to manifest a life of well-being, well, you first got to believe in yourself to be able to do that.
I didn't know what the steps were. I just knew that I was capable. I was like, if someone on this planet is capable, it's going to be me. And I don't even know what the other side looks like, but I'm going to figure it out, right?
Like, do you have enough belief to say that I can have the amazing life of well-being that I desire for myself? Because if you believe that, then you'll always be okay. And you can always work towards that.
If you could say the same thing to the burnout or the anxiety and just simply say, not today, right? This is a practice. Just like the practice of medicine, just like the practice of mindfulness, these are things that you have to keep working at. It's always a work in progress.
Hello, and welcome to Exploratory, our Get Motivated podcast, where we explore everything related to well-being. We're so excited to be here with you guys today, and we hope that you are ready to experience some more awesomeness as it relates to our topic today, which is self-belief. We're going to be talking about self-belief. What is it? How do you get it? What are some specific how-to strategies? Why does your self-belief suck right now? We're going to talk about everything related to self-belief. And with that being said, I am with our co-host, Renee Michelle. Renee Michelle! Let's get ready to rumble!
Oh my goodness.
I may or may not cut that out. I'm not sure.
He's wild this morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe good evening whenever you're listening to the podcast. That seems to be like my new greeting for everything, and I'm digging it. So yes, it's great to be on with everyone. Hello.
Yeah. Well, so how's your day going so far, Renee? Is it going pretty good?
Going pretty good. Yes. It was today's Monday for us. So we get up, and this is the first thing that, we usually have on our plates as far as work goes. That's in stone. So going pretty good. I've already had some good talks this morning, I think. So, yeah. How about you?
It's going good. My dog tried to eat one of my chickens, and
yeah.
I hear like scream, like someone's dying, getting murdered. I run downstairs, and my rat terrier. We have we have 6 chicks in the house, but he got into their little inside the house thing, and he grabbed one. So that's actually a really good segue, because his self-belief was obviously,
that's his job.
High level, because he knows better than to go grab a chicken. He knows he's not supposed to do that.
Well,
he's a rat terrier.
I don't know. His genetics would say otherwise.
But he's not a chicken terrier.
Not a chicken terrier?
No, a chicken
it's
teriyaki.
Small and it moves.
A chicken teriyaki.
It's small and it moves. Chicken
teriyaki. Anyway, okay,
that's
we're
funny.
obviously I've had too much caffeine this morning. Let's get into it. The good people don't want to hear us talk about dog chicken teriyaki, because So today we are talking about self-belief. Man, one of my favorite subjects of all time, because it is so important. And how does it relate to, well, we're going to cover all of that. And I believe Renee's going to be pretty much leading us off in terms of self-belief. She's going to ask me a lot of questions, and we're just going to have a conversation. And we hope to hear from you all as well.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get into it. We always like to start with defining if you can define how you view self-belief, Doc, let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read it from an article that I wrote maybe 2.5 months ago, titled "The Self-Belief of a Tiger: How Veterinary Professionals Can Have Good Self-Belief," or something like that. But anyway, the definition that I put there, and it's my absolute most favorite definition of self-belief. I don't know if I got it from somewhere else, if I made it up myself. I'm really good about that, making up definitions. But to me, self-belief is the ability to believe in yourself to accomplish any task, no matter the odds, no matter the difficulty, no matter the adversity. It's the belief that you can accomplish it. And that's how I define self-belief. And I know that's kind of a big, really bold way to look at it. Let me break that down. So the ability to believe in yourself to accomplish any task, no matter the odds. Wow, that's powerful. I'll stop right there.
Yeah, that's really big. That's really, really big. So I think that most people, on a really surface level, you might be able to say it, maybe it's like your self-confidence, or that it can sort of be brought out in different ways, right? But it's not relating to just yourself or how your self-esteem, or, we have different words that it seems like self-belief is maybe wrapping some of those things together, but also could be seen as its own entity, but really that nothing is going to stop it. And I think that's huge.
Yes.
And it's not something that a lot of people are talking all the time. We hear about self-esteem all the time. We hear about self-confidence. But we don't hear a ton about self-belief. And if you think about even just the word belief, the word belief is something that defined is, the acceptance that a statement is true, or that something exists. You have trust and faith and confidence. And a lot of times belief, it is, your core thoughts become your beliefs, and so these things are really rooted in us. I would like to add that self-belief is not a trait. Just like self-confidence is not a trait. Instead, these things, and this is going to blow you away, I hope, because it blew me away. At 30-something years old, I was like, wait, what? These are skills. And a skill you can learn anytime. So if you don't have any self-belief, you can cultivate it. That was huge for me. Just in confidence, I think we were raised to think that like either you are confident or you're not, but in fact, you can create that. You can cultivate it, and the self-belief is the same way. Would you agree that it's a skill that you can build up and develop? And even if you're coming from nothing, like you can really get the gears turning on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a little bit later on, I'm going to give some specific how-to steps to cultivate that self-belief. It is something that can be learned. And yeah, so we're going to get into that. But you brought up a really good point in regards to self-esteem and self-confidence. And I believe that self-belief is kind of like the umbrella category, and it's comprised of your self-confidence. It's comprised of your self-esteem. And that's a whole nother lecture podcast in and of itself. And so maybe we'll get into like the core differences between self-esteem, self-reliance, and self-confidence, because they are each a little bit different, but self-belief overall, like the result of your ability to be self-reliant, your ability to have amazing self-esteem, your ability to be self-confident. So to have those things. Yeah, but to answer your question, I do believe self-belief can be cultivated. And that's one of my favorite parts about the stuff that we do through Get Motivated. I honestly believe that true well-being is a product of, your ability to believe in yourself. Do you believe you can
and
X, Y, or Z?
Yeah. And trust that even if that's something that came up for me a couple times is, I might not be able to guarantee certain steps along the way, but I trust myself enough to figure out what those things are, in order to make things better, or, like your definition said, complete a task. So, what role do you think it plays in the well-being for veterinary professionals?
Another great question. And I believe that self-belief is the core of veterinary well-being, or of well-being for veterinary professionals, of true well-being at least. Because if you think about self-belief, if you in the definition that I had, I said that it's the ability to believe in yourself to accomplish any task, no matter the difficulty, adversity, or blah, blah, blah. So let's say, for example, you're suffering from burnout, compassion fatigue. If you have self-belief, then you can believe in yourself to be able to overcome that, right? And the second part, if you believe in yourself to be able to get out of that, then you're going to go for it. And there's no way that it can take you out necessarily, in terms of leading you to a place of no return, something like suicide. If you believe in yourself to be able to switch jobs, if you believe in yourself to be able to learn a procedure that stresses you out, if you believe in yourself to be able to handle and communicate with clients effectively, if you believe in yourself to be able to be okay when clients can't afford treatment for their pets. Like, do you have enough belief to say that I can have the amazing life of well-being that I desire for myself? Because if you believe that, then you'll always be okay. And you can always work towards that. Now, with that being said, I really do believe that it's the core of the reason as to why veterinary professionals are suffering from sort of the poor well-being that we're hearing about. That's not to say that self-belief alone is enough to bring one true well-being, but it's a major part of it. The other part is the action that has to come behind that, right? So if I believe in myself to be able to win a marathon, but I don't practice, and I don't, I'm not taking actions towards being able to win that marathon, well, the self-belief in that case isn't really going to be enough for me to be able to accomplish what it is that I want. Okay, so there's the belief aspect, and then there's the action aspect behind that to manifest the life that you want for yourself. And as veterinary professionals, if you want to manifest a life of well-being, well, you first got to believe in yourself to be able to do that.
Right. That's an amazing point. I think you're spot on as far as it's starting at the core, because you could work, which a lot of veterinary professionals know, especially being, similar personality types, that, we can strive, we can effort, we can force, we can do, but if you're doing all of these things and you don't believe them, if it doesn't align, then the results tend to fall short. And sometimes those steps don't even show up along the way because you're so closed off to them. In my worst times, I didn't know what the steps were. I just knew that I was capable. I was like, if someone on this planet is capable, it's going to be me. And I don't even know what the other side looks like, but I'm going to figure it out, right? And that plays a huge role in the entire, your entire career, because it's not going to show up again. Your challenges, your adversity, that is not ever going to stop knocking on your door. And so that's why a lot of times we're talking about self-management, because if you overcome a certain state of burnout or compassion fatigue or poor well-being in whatever manifestation it has in your life, it's not to say that it won't ever come across your desk again. In fact, it very well may be more likely that it does. Maybe you're more prone to it, or maybe it sort of creeps around, it lingers. But now you get to manage yourself differently because, and I'm going to use the quote, here we go, from yesterday, not today, right? What do we say, right? From Game of Thrones last night, what do we say to death? Not today. But if you can say the same thing to the burnout or the anxiety and just simply say, not today, right? And then you just keep saying that. And, obviously, like you said, there's more steps that come along the way, but it's absolutely right. Mindset first, and then move into the steps or the strategies in which to bring that into your life and things like that. So, because otherwise it's backwards, we're putting the cart before the horse, right? You're doing the stuff, but you don't believe it. You don't accept it. It just really shortens the results. So that's amazing. I think that's a very key takeaway from most of the work that we're doing, but especially this one here, is that, it really starts there. So, let's say someone has a lot of self-belief, do you think that, obviously without self-belief, it's pretty obvious that can be an issue for people, and it may not be a really direct issue that you're able to put your finger on and diagnose. Sometimes it will show up in a really indirect way, and the symptom of your lack of self-belief is this indirect thing, so sometimes you're going to see it in a way that maybe, especially if you don't know anything about self-belief, right? Maybe you see it as like you didn't get that job, or you didn't get the estimate approved, or you didn't, something didn't go the way that you wanted it to, right? So some of those things you might think, oh, well, they don't have the money, or it wasn't the right time. But in fact, maybe, there was something. They say communication is only like, what, I don't know, 7% words or something. That's some minute amount, right? So what else comes across the table in the exam room when you're walking through an estimate with a client, and some of that is maybe self-belief or things like that. So if you have too much self-belief, could that be an issue, or is there a point where?
Yeah. So yes and no. You can have, I mostly say no to that question. Like, you cannot have too much self-belief. Okay. The only place where having too much self-belief will get you into trouble is if you don't know how to handle failure, in my opinion. And if you don't know how to deal with that. And this is what I mean. If I believe in myself to be able to lose a certain amount of weight in a certain time frame, okay, let's say I have a lot of self-belief to lose 30 pounds in 3 months. The only place where having that high level of self-belief for myself, let's shorten the time frame even more. Lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks. Okay. All right. And I say I'm going to do it in a healthy way. I'm not going to starve myself, because you could probably do that. You can chop off an arm, chop off a leg, and lose the pounds. Right. And so we're not talking about anything crazy, but let's say I'm just going to work out and have a healthier diet. I'm not going to eat the junk anymore, stuff like that. If I fail in 2 weeks, that's where the self-belief will actually hurt you. If you believed that you could do it and then you fail and you don't know how to handle failure, then maybe you go into depression. Maybe you're upset that you didn't get the result that you wanted. Okay. If you believe in yourself to be able to get 100 on a particular exam and you get a 95,
Mhm.
like maybe that depresses you because you don't understand how to handle failure. But if you understand how to handle failure, if you understand how to handle your shortcomings in life, and if you understand that there's an advantage and every disadvantage, then even if you fall short, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you understand that failure is just a stepping stone towards great success, which is why, and Renee will understand this and working with me, sometimes I set unrealistic deadlines because I don't care. If I don't meet that deadline, I do care and I do my best to meet that deadline. But if I don't, I'm not going to shame myself into a corner. But I do believe that there is a problem with not having enough self-belief. Because if you don't have enough self-belief, then maybe you never even try to lose that weight in a particular time frame. Maybe you never even give doing X or Y or Z a shot. Maybe you never have that conversation with your significant other or with your boss because you never even believed that you could change the trajectory of your relationship with your boss or your significant other. But if I believe I can have an amazing marriage and I go after that and I have 100% self-belief, okay, then at worst case, I fail. But I understand how to handle failure, and failure doesn't destroy me. But if you don't know how to handle failure, okay, and setting big bars for you is something that destroys you. If you don't meet that mark, then yes, you can have too much self-belief, and yes, it can be a bad thing. And I believe that's where self-awareness comes in. Like for me, I don't mind taking a lot of risk. But if you're the type of person and you just know and understand that you cannot handle coming up short, then maybe you need to temper your self-belief just a bit.
Yeah, like almost as if, and if we're thinking about this as a skill set, I think that there's a way, like you said, temper it a little bit or click it up a notch. If you just think about it as clicks on like a dial, if you're coming into the game and a game of life, we'll say, into this podcast, and you have no idea where you fall on this scale, know that, I remember back in the day in, early sociology and psychology courses, we learned about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And that's whether it's originating in yourself or whether it's an external factor that motivates you. And so when you're talking about a deadline, that's that motivation, right? But it's coming from, you set the deadline because you believed in yourself in the first place. The deadline is something that is going to assist you. The deadline is a tool, but it is not the end all be all. And then if you do have a shortcoming, you still believe in yourself that you can finish the project, finish the task, despite the adversity, right? Because we don't know what happened along the way that prevented you from finishing that task. And so that's where sometimes procrastination or resistance, reading this really great book called The Art of War? The War of Art? No, it's The Art of War. Because the war of art is like about war, but it's about art, artistic and creative endeavors, and resistance manifesting as procrastination and other things. And some of it comes from self-belief. And so it's interesting how that'll show up along the way. But again, you're bringing it down to the core level to say, we have a choice, right? We have a choice, we have a decision. And as an adult human, hey, maybe you've been conditioned all this time to not have any self-belief, but you're old enough now that you get to make a decision and you can just take your little click dial and turn it up a notch. Or if you're like, oh, wow, what he just said really hit home. I set some weird boundaries, didn't make much of it, and now I'm, really beating up on myself. So that's where you can click the dial down and find where those sweet spots are in order to get them both aligned, right? so that it's working for you and not against you, right? You want your self-belief to serve you, not serve your beating up process.
That's right. That's right. But to be clear on the fact that it's not the fact that you believed in yourself too much that was the issue. It was the fact that you couldn't handle the failure that was the problem. You know what I'm saying? So definitely turn it down if you need to. But I would say, consider going to find books on how to handle failure, how to overcome adversity, how to be resilient. Because that is the core issue. It's not the self-belief that's the problem. It's your ability to bounce back from falling short. And so to be clear on that and to know that you can turn that dial down, but at the same time, that's not the self-belief dial isn't the problem. That's a great way to help in the meantime, in between time, but it's the root of the issue still there. So
what could people do to, assuming that, most people maybe have less self-belief, right? What could people do to improve their self-belief?
That's another...
Or cultivate it, right? Like if you're coming out from, and let's say you have none.
So I believe that the first thing before we even get there is understanding where self-belief comes from and why it's awesome for some people and why it's lacking for others. And I honestly believe, and I'm going to post a diagram. So if you hear this, it'll probably be, you're probably in Get Motivated University right now listening to this free podcast. But I'm going to post a diagram where it shows where people's self-belief comes from. And I honestly believe that your self-belief comes from the bad experiences that you've had in your life and the good experiences that you've had in your life. Or in other words, the failures that you've had in your life and the successes that you've had in your life. Because let's think about it. Let's assume there was an individual who, we're playing baseball. Okay, we're playing baseball. You have person A, who every time they came to the plate, they struck out. And then you got player B, the twin brother or twin sibling, brother, sister, whatever, of player A. And every time they came to the plate, they hit a home run. Now, just naturally, who do you think is going to have the greater self-belief or belief in themselves to hit a home run when they come to the plate? Who's going to have the greater self-belief as a baseball player? Probably the one who every time they came to the plate, they smacked it out of the park. So that's just natural. And we didn't change any variable except the fact that one person succeeded every time and the other person failed every single time. So, and I'll let you go ahead there to sort of pop in on that.
No, you said it. You said it. You said it. Natural. I think that's really subtle. They're very subtle things that, it's not as if you took out a piece of paper and signed a little contract that said, I agree to having poor self-belief. In fact, it was just really natural and it happened very subtly. And so you're right. When you go up to the plate next time, you're like questioning yourself. And so I think that was just really key that people, it's not obviously if something really bad happens, that is maybe when you're older, you can put your finger on it and go, that really messed up my self-belief. Maybe it was a failed relationship or something, but when it happens subtly, it still matters.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's time after time.
It's so common that you see like people, I have family members who have been divorced like 3 or 4 times. You have to ask yourself, like, what level is their self-belief playing in this process at this point? The fact that, okay, this is marriage number 4, the last 3 failed. Okay. So, and this is, in the back of your mind, subconsciously, are you thinking that this one's going to fail because none of the other ones have worked out? And then oftentimes you do see that 4th one, but, or that next one happen. But if you look at, and it's really cool the way I have that diagram written out where you've got I have a lot of common sort of negative or bad experiences that can happen to a person, bad grades, people who you care about that don't believe in you, or a lot of losses, or just anything. Like if you try to lose weight and it doesn't work, and then you try again and it doesn't work, like each time you try and it doesn't work, your self-belief is tanking because the next time you try, you're gonna be like, dang man, well, I tried this before, I'm not seeing the results now. So your self-belief to lose weight is it's in the gutter. It's in the gutter. And when I think about,
and so as a doctor, like what kind of things in your specific experience as a doctor, I want to talk about like when you're in practice.
Yeah.
What kind of things came up for you that whether they did shake your self-belief or whether they could have? Does anything come up for you?
So there are some personal experiences that I can kind of mention. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but in my senior year of undergrad, I started stuttering a little bit, and I had never been a stutterer before, but I kind of had this thing that would just happen. And when I got to vet school, my belief and my ability to ask a question without stumbling over my words and sounding stupid was really, 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 really low. So I just wouldn't ask questions. If there's something that I didn't understand, I wouldn't say anything. And there were times where I really wanted to ask a question. And like, I was like, okay, Quincy, you're going to do it. You're going to ask this question. But my heart rate would get up like so high, and I would be so nervous that I was just going to stumble like the whole thing out, that I just wouldn't ask that question. And, that was a major thing for me. And I think about veterinary students, and I talk to them all the time just through coaching and going around doing these talks. But the lack of belief that students can have in themselves, even the ones who are getting decent grades and who are excelling, they're good at this or they're good at that, their sort of core self-belief is in the trash, because oftentimes of something that was said to them by someone else at an earlier time. And when I was able to shift my own personal self-belief in regards to my ability to get out there and just speak, regardless of the outcome, and this is what I'm talking about, regardless of the failure, because I still stutter sometimes, and I still stumble sometimes, right? But the difference is I'm unattached from the outcome at this point. Like if I stutter my way through an entire speech, yeah, I may be a little bit embarrassed about that, but at the end of the day, I'm going to find the advantage and that disadvantage and say, hey, at least you faced your fear, and at least you got out there, and that makes you like a champion in and of itself. Now, getting back to the practice example, you see this all the time where an individual, like a doctor, I witnessed this with my colleagues and with myself, where maybe a surgery doesn't go right, and then you're a little bit afraid of that next procedure because your self-belief went down. You can do I always say this, you can do 1,000 spays right, but if you jack one up and, the pedicle wasn't tied off well and it dies, or if something just happens, that you didn't even do and it dies, then your self-belief is going to drop. And for whatever reason, our failures tend to affect us way more than the successes or the wins that we have. So the fact that you've done 1,000 spays right, it can be negated by one erroneous or one failed spay. It can completely tank someone to the point where they don't even want to do the surgery anymore because they can't handle that failure. So that's one example of where I see it typically. And that's just kind of one example of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that, I believe everyone can relate on some level whether it be a personal thing, we all have our things. And most of the time, our things that make us the most insecure and shape our self-belief are really private things. And maybe they're obvious to others, maybe they don't, maybe they're not, but generally speaking, it's not something that we're super open about sharing or talking about because it is so private. And then when it is in the career space, whatever that is, whether, yes, you asked a question and you got a response that made you feel small, and we see that, you see it in your vet schools, but also in new jobs. Whether you are an experienced professional and you're coming into a new job, or whether you're a new professional, I have seen the way people talk to other people, and by golly, that is, sometimes it hurts me, sometimes you feel how the person who asked the question feels, and you think to yourself, you know what, you were new once, and maybe people did talk to you in that way. Who knows? I mean, but gosh, yeah. And we're seeing a big change in that. We're sort of trying to rehumanize, I think, the workplace across many industries, but especially the veterinary industry. The culture that professionals who have been in the industry for a long time, there's a certain culture to it, and we were sort of raised in a certain way, but, is it still serving us? We have to be open and vulnerable and just present enough to ask ourselves the questions that matter. Is that way of going about things still serving us? Or is it not? Because times are different, people are different, both the pet owners and the staff, and so, or are we doing ourselves a disservice by not asking those questions, by not being open to the answers? Why ask the questions if you're not going to be open to the response? Because if that response is, no, this way of going about things is not serving the profession. Okay, well, then you have to be willing and open to change. And for many, many people, I mean, mass majority of people, they don't like change. That's uncomfortable. That's weird. They don't want to do it. They've gotten into their ways. They're very comfortable with that. And but is it serving them? Is it serving them? Is it serving them as a professional? Is it serving the team? So talk to me about, okay, go back to, my original question, which I love this little rabbit hole that we went on. What do you do? And maybe it's more towards the failure, but what do you do? Maybe you just, in your experience, what do you do to get that self-belief back up after something weird has happened?
Yes, that's a really good question. And so I've got kind of three things that people can do to really get your self-belief rocking and rolling. This is what I'm talking about here, man. Like this is life. This is the good shit, if you will. Okay. So the first thing is become an action taker. Become an action taker. The best thing to destroy fear, and fear is a major component of a poor self-belief. Oftentimes you're afraid to believe in yourself because you're afraid you're going to fail, or you're afraid it's not going to work out. And the best way to destroy that is to take action. So I want you to think of something right now that you've been wanting to do, a conversation that you've been wanting to have, a place that you want to go, like something. And I want you to start the action process towards just doing whatever that is. Whatever that is. There is a YouTube video you want to shoot. If there is a type of procedure that you want to try, then I want you to, there's somebody you want to call and tell them you love them, but that's not something that you do necessarily. That's not your personality to do that. You want to lose weight. You want to, go to the spa, and for whatever reason, you don't believe in yourself you don't believe you deserve that, just to take action towards that. a typical a type of skill you want to learn. I don't know what it is, type of food you want to try. I don't care what it is. Just take action towards that. And the reason
and it
that's
can be a baby step.
huh?
It can be a baby step. Like, it doesn't have to be like
God.
maybe do the procedure
Yes.
tomorrow, but it could just be like mention to the manager that you want to do a gastro or something like that. You just do like a baby step.
It takes some step towards that. And even just writing it down and saying it out loud that I'm going to do this at some point is beyond powerful. I love writing it down and saying it out loud and putting it somewhere that I can actually see that. And if it's something like a procedure, so if we're talking veterinary professionals here, start reading about it. Read about it in this surgery book. Go find another surgery book. Read about it in that surgery book. Call to the vet school. Ask someone who's really good at it. Like, if you want to do it, but you're scared. Just be honest, but take action towards that, okay? The second thing that I would say is to write out, and this is so powerful, and this is, another completely different lecture. I actually have another sort of podcast that I do called the Dream to Succeed Show, where I've done a 6-part series on this, but write out your life, your ideal life, the exact way that you would have it if you could have it, if you had like a genie that could wave a magic wand around. To write that out, whatever it is, don't hold back, write it all out, from your financial life, your relationships, your physical, appearance, your physical health, just everything about your life, to write that out. And again, that's a really complex process in and of itself. But to do that and to realize that you are co-creating that with a higher power. Okay. You're co-creating that with a higher power, but to just write those things down and then to, again, go back to number one and to start writing out those small first step action steps that you can take. The reason this is so powerful is because results. Remember the person B who stepped up to the plate in baseball and they smacked it out of the park every single time? Okay. The results that you achieve are going to be directly correlated to your self-belief. And trust me, I know that this is law. It's science, that if you write out that what you desire, and if you start taking actions towards that, it's like universal law that you're going to get results from that. And not just any type of result, you're going to get good results from that. This is something that I have done for myself. Okay. And when you start to realize that, wow, I can write out exactly what I want. And if I take actions towards that, and if I do that frequently, eventually I'm going to start getting those home runs and the hits and the success from stepping up to the plate and swinging the bat. Then that really starts to build up your self-belief. And the third thing, and this is by far the most powerful thing, so going back to positive results, the best thing that you can do to create positive results every single day, no matter what you've done and what has happened, and this will be in that diagram that I'm talking about, is to cultivate deep gratitude and to operate from what I call higher perspectives or higher viewpoints. Because through learning what I call a deep gratitude, and again, that's a whole nother podcast in and of itself, a whole nother week's worth of podcasts even, but you can find those in Get Motivated University if you take the gratitude course. But you can take bad life experiences and through gratitude and higher viewpoints, higher perspectives, put them into your good life experience category. And that's the easiest, the cheapest, and the best way to cultivate an amazing self-belief is if you can take a bad life experience, in my case, stuttering. If I get up there and I stutter in front of a crowd of 1,000 people, if through gratitude and through understanding that there's an advantage in every disadvantage, there's opportunity in all chaos, and that life's always happening for me and not to me, I can have a positive life experience out of something that historically would have been like a traumatic and bad life experience. If I got up and stood in front of a crowd historically, that would probably like, I'd shame myself into a corner. I'd feel like a piece of shit, and it would destroy my self-belief. But through those 4 things, gratitude and those 3 viewpoints, I can put them into my good life experience category. And so now I got a little bit better based off of something that appeared to be negative. So those are 3 things I would recommend. Take action, idealization, writing out your ideal life, and then operating and adopting those higher perspectives and higher viewpoints in gratitude.
That is outstanding. And, I'm sitting here, that brought up a couple things for me, little nuggets of wisdom I'd like to share. And then I'm looking around my office at all of the things that, talking about self-belief with you over the past few weeks, sometimes I didn't connect the dots with the things that influence my self-belief. But I realized that I've been doing work on that for far longer than what I had originally realized. And some of that is like my most recent nugget is focusing on the celebrations. So I know we're running short on time here. But focusing on the celebrations, meaning if you're not paying attention to the small stuff, if you're not taking the moment to give yourself a pat on the back for the small stuff, you are not going to do it for the big stuff because it's not a habit. And if you're not willing, and so flip that. If your really big desired thing, if you don't have enough self-belief to get to that, don't start with that. Start with something smaller. Start with something tiny to build up the habit of exercising your self-belief. Right now, we're going to turn self-belief into a muscle, just like we do with mindfulness and personal development, a skill that you're exercising. And, I've got a quote on my wall from Michael Jordan who says, you have to expect things of yourself before you can do them. And it's true. That matters. Everything that you said about writing stuff down, I have things on my dry erase board that say, have the confidence that is required to achieve your goals, because that matters. Say something, just those 2 words, say something. That is, whatever I decide to point that toward in my day, that matters. And I have, maybe it's something you guys can Google. If I can find it, I will put it in the show notes, but it's the Champions Manifesto. And it's everything that you just talked about as far as the adversity, the focus, the character, the desire, building that sort of excellence. And the last thing I'll leave you with is balancing the energy that is between the desire and your belief. I think the desire can be more natural for people to say, I want something. I think that the step we're often missing is the outlining of what it really looks like and feels like. And then the last step is, aligning that energy, because whether or not we believe we deserve it, we can achieve it, and so forth. So what sort of exercise can we employ when something our self-belief has taken a hit? Is there a certain, what do you do? What do you do, right? I know that, or what would you recommend to me, right? So if you know how to handle failures and you're really skilled in that area, what would you recommend to me if I say, Q, my self-belief really took a hit. This has happened. And now I'm really just questioning myself.
Yes, that's a great question. And I'm actually hold on, let me look something up.
Oh, you know what? While you're doing that, let me say this. This is a practice. Just like the practice of medicine, just like the practice of mindfulness, these are things that you have to keep working at. It's always a work in progress, right? So just keep that in mind. Start where you are. Keep that in mind, as it's just a work in progress.
Okay. So I believe that this quote by J.K. Rowling, you've probably heard this one before, Renee. And so J.K. Rowling, she's the author of the Harry Potter series. But I would say this to someone whose self-belief just took a hit because of a bad life experience or because of a failure or whatever. But it reads, you might never fail on the scale that I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. And when I first heard that quote, it really stood out to me. And I always try to keep that in mind. And sometimes it's hard. I'm going to go back and be more of a human now and less of a personal development junkie and say that when you fail, it hurts when you fail. And when your self-belief takes a hit, that's a real thing. And even within the last, month or so, I've had to shed a tear because of a criticism that I had that really hit me towards my self-belief. But it's always going back to the solid foundation that you've created for yourself and that you've built for yourself that allows you to be able to bounce back. So when you talk about resilience, that isn't something that you can just download. It's something that you cultivate by being immersed in quotes like the one from J.K. Rowling and really mastering and embodying and truly living those viewpoints and perspectives and really learning how to have deep gratitude and only seeing the positive in things, that's what allows me to bounce back again and again and again and again. So that's what I would say to someone who just took a self-belief hit.
This has been a great podcast. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Again, we would love to hear your experiences. We really want for this podcast to be an open dialogue. So please send us some info. Tell us where you're at. Tell us what you guys liked. And we can't wait until next time. Everything that we talk about is always super interconnected, but you can pick up, at any point along the way. So, again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, like it, share it. Bring us around with you guys.